but they can't tell they're there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that magic of post-production, which is a real big part of what I do too, is making things, that maybe weren't there, or making things
Mhm.
look better, or improving the original product. The magic of post-production. There's always a line, "Fix it in post," which is,
Yes.
an ongoing joke in the live events and sports business that, whatever didn't quite go right the first time around can be magically fixed in a dark room. But we love that challenge. That's our job.
Yeah, I do love seeing a lot of y'all's videos that because I will watch it live and then I'll go, whenever you guys have the or the videos later, I'm like, well, that didn't go that way, but I like the way they clean that up a lot because, for some people who didn't watch it, they don't need to know that they tripped over the rope or that the mic wasn't in the right spot or, the
Right.
camera angle didn't pick it up or whatever. So I love how much y'all clean it up. And obviously, you've been doing this for so long that it might just be easy for you, but, I imagine you are helping other people be like, okay, well, this was this camera angle, but is there another one that you could use to make this look better?
Absolutely. I always I like to compare it to almost like putting a puzzle together.
Mm,
And I think that's one of the fun things about professional wrestling that differentiates us from other live event products, is that we do have more creative wiggle room
yeah.
to retell a story or tweak how a story's told or change the narrative, um, which is an incredible power, and an incredible challenge, and one of my favorite parts of the job.
I want to go back to the physical library part because 2008, this was 7 years after WCW had folded, ECW had folded, and I know WWE was picking up their libraries, and I want to say they maybe had gotten world class by that time, and maybe a couple others. What did the physical library actually look like? Because, in our heads, we're just imagining some gigantic library that is just rows and rows of tape and, you know, uh, you know, we just almost like a Harry Potter type library where
Right.
it's just, everything's there. What was it actually like being in that tape library? And then I want to ask if it's still around or where did it go or
Sure.
yeah.
So, as you might imagine, in a traditional library, full of books and other media items, very similar. This big, large area with movable shelves, giant
Right.
shelves that I would climb to grab tapes. So that was a lot of fun as well. Got a little exercise in when I was grabbing tapes. Yeah, it was just this giant vault of movable shelves that we would, jump around in, reorganize, grab labels. The physical library no longer exists, at least here on the premises.
Mm,
Um, we've worked with the service, and honestly, you'd have to ask some people, the archivists and our media librarian team now, in terms of the organization. I'm a bit removed from it, but we did use a service. I don't know if you're familiar with Iron Mountain,
mm-mm.
which is the service that a lot of different media companies use, and essentially they store these old media items, old reels, tapes, original media that you just don't
Wow.
want to ever lose, and they store it in these bunkers that are apparently, like, atomic bomb proof. They're supposed to be, these incredibly stable areas that are climate controlled, obviously, where you don't have to worry about any of your stuff degrading. But at this point, obviously, our entire physical library, or a vast majority of it, has been digitized, like
Right.
most operations that have libraries, which was a massive project in of itself.
Yeah.
Because obviously we have our decades of history, we
Mhm.
have the decades of wrestling history that we've purchased over the years. But what a great way to get educated on the product too. Because
Yeah.
again, as I mentioned before, a fan as a kid, but kind of moved away from it as I got older. And then bam, you're in this room and you have essentially the entire history of wrestling over the last 100 plus years at your fingertips. So just getting educated on the regional time period in wrestling,
Mm,
and the superstars across and wrestlers across all these different um, teams and leagues and markets. Really cool, and just seeing obviously how production has changed and how the business has changed. It's evolved. If it hadn't, it wouldn't be here anymore. Which I think is one of the most impressive things about professional wrestling as an industry, is how
yeah.
much it's changed to evolve with its audience.
Oh, of course. I mean, yeah, basketball, not so much. I mean, it's a little faster game now. Baseball, they've changed so many rules to where it has to be a faster game now. Football actually has come slower because there's more commercial breaks.
Right.
Hockey, I remember growing, you probably remember this too, where they would put the blue dot on the puck in hockey so that people could try to figure out where the puck is because a lot of people didn't understand how to follow a black puck on a white ice. It made no sense to me.
That's standard definition was a tough time for television, especially if you had to follow around a small object like a puck. It was, thank goodness for HD. It's
Yeah.
made sports like hockey way easier to follow.
Oh, and it makes golf way more prettier to watch too, because everyone was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
you have to watch golf. You can see the every blade of grass." And I'm like, well, okay, I guess it's still boring, but I'll watch it." Now, when you were going through those histories and those decades, was there a time period that you kind of really fell in love with that you didn't know that you were, wanting to find out more about?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of if anything in particular stuck with me. Some of the old WCCW stuff,
Oh yeah,
Texas Dallas based was very interesting. I think more for the storytelling versus the production.
right.
I think they had some really cool out of the box ideas. And just watching some of the territory stuff in general and seeing little things that were picked up on, the old Crockett stuff, and
Mm,
even WWF for that matter, like watching their product in the 70s and 80s. And I think you could really start to see how WWF, and then WWE, how I think one of the reasons that their products stood out even back then was production. I
mhm,
think it was an organization that probably put a little bit more money and thought into production before other territories did, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they ended up on top
mhm.
because I think they understood the importance of production for storytelling, and for just creating a product that just looked better.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. It's funny you say that. I actually was lucky enough to as of recording day, I talked to Kevin Von Erich yesterday, and I asked him about
Uh,
some of the stuff they were doing because they were one of the first, even regionally wise companies to do music as an entrance, and there
oh
wasn't
yeah,
really many other. I mean, everyone started piggybacking off of that afterwards. He said it was Michael Hayes actually who did it first in Atlanta when they were teaming together. He would play Freebird coming out, and he was like, "Oh man, why aren't we doing that at home?" And so then, his dad was actually very open to ideas that they would come with because they were the younger wrestlers. They were the youngest or younger people coming through the company and wanting to further the company. So they would do things like that. He said they would hit harder. They would do the music. They would, the production of the way they would put things together afterwards. And then obviously the broadcasting wise, I mean, they were all the way over in Israel for a while, which is nuts. But
right.
yeah, but they were one of the first ones to do that music. And now you can't even imagine a wrestler coming out to no music. I mean,
Oh no,
it's happened now recently, but it is an it's an anomaly so much that everyone's like, what's happening? Why is somebody coming out with no music?
right. Oh, it's so integral to the product and the live event experience. It's
Mhm.
how people identify with certain superstars who are essentially married to their music.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's really difficult to imagine professional wrestling without music. And it's funny you bring that up because in a few weeks we're going to be in Cleveland for SummerSlam,
right.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and we're playing around with some projects now for that event that are going to be very music involved. So I'm really excited about that because obviously it's like peanut butter and jelly. Music and
Hmm.
professional wrestling are so intertwined over the years. I have to ask John, have you seen the Iron Claw? Speaking of WCCW and the Von Erichs.
I saw it twice in theaters and I cried both times. I think even the opening like sequence of shots, I think it's one of the most beautifully shot wrestling movies I've ever seen. Like the wrestlers phenomenal, but the way they filmed wrestling to me was just kind of regular filming of wrestling. But the way they did it for Iron Claw, I thought was just so different and so amazing.
I was really impressed. I went in with very limited expectations and I was
Mm.
blown away by the storytelling.
Yeah.
Blown away by the storytelling. I thought it was a very, very well put together movie.
Oh, without it. I mean, I saw it first before it had come out, and then they did some live Q&A with the director and a couple of the actors afterwards. And he even talked because he's from England and he was just captivated by the Von Erich story in general. And I was like, how did the Von Erichs come on his radar? Which I thought was interesting.
Mm,
And then the details are a little weird if you know the details because they kind of merge two brother stories together. They completely get rid of one of them. But it was, I mean, it's still beautifully shot. And like you said, the storytelling is amazing. And I loved, yeah, everything about it was just so good. Like, I really think it got robbed for the Oscars. But again, the Oscars are more or less a popularity contest. So it doesn't really matter.
Right, yeah, you never quite know, and I think timing's huge too in terms
Yeah.
of when movies are released. I'm trying to remember the timing of the release on that one, but I feel
I
like
think
it
it
was
was
almost too late in the
Yeah, I thought
awards
that
season,
too.
if
I
I'm
was like,
remembering it.
yeah, it was December, so I think it probably was a little too late, but
Right. It's funny how the timing of a release of a movie can have a massive impact on how it does during award season, and
yeah,
if your movie comes out too early in the year or too late, it seems like you tend to be left on the cutting room floor, unfortunately.
yep. Yeah, and I mean, ever since that movie, I put Stranglehold on my workout mix, and every time it comes out, I'm like, okay, I get it. I know why it came out. So,
Yep. Yeah. No, but I mean, there's nothing better than 70s rock when it comes to pro wrestling. It's
yeah.
a marriage made in heaven.
So I love what you guys. I mean, you mentioned SummerSlam is right around the corner, and you guys are in the Rock City of Cleveland. You are doing amazing things now with the way that they're doing the promotional videos for the SummerSlam. Like it looks more like a rock concert with the rock posters, and you guys did a really good job with Money in the Bank. It was looked like a heist movie that was almost like 50s and 60s kind of themed.
Right.
Where so as the years have gone by now, especially over the past, we'll say 3 or 4 years now, there's been a transition when it came to upper leadership when it either comes from the whole company or from Kevin Dunn is no longer with the company, and we're seeing different camera angles. We're doing long shots as well, which everyone's loved. I've loved as well. Um,
Right.
Rhea this past Monday played with it really well. How has this transition of, people stepping down from the company, other people coming up, obviously trying different things when it comes to production and post production. How has that transition been for not only you, but that you kind of felt throughout the rest of the company?
I think in general we're in a really good place right now, and I
Yeah.
have to give a shout out to, John, I could spend 2 hours telling you about the incredibly talented people I work alongside. It is mind blowing how much talent is in the studio. And you talk about the looks and the aesthetics for SummerSlam and Money in the Bank this past month. Our graphics team and our creative team are, I would put them against anybody in this business, in this live event business. The things, the elements they come up with, the creativity, um, it's unbelievable. But to get back to your question in terms of where we are right now, I just think it's an exciting time. I feel like people feel creatively free and open to try things, to take
Mm,
risks. And that's what this business is all about. Like
yeah.
we want to have fun. We want to push the envelope. We want to challenge each other. I was talking to a coworker a few weeks ago when he was talking about how there is like this friendly competition between a lot of us and wanting to, one up each other to a certain extent. When we see each other's work, we're inspired by each other because we know the work that we all put into it. And there's nothing better than working alongside A, incredibly talented people,
Mhm.
but B, people who are going to give you their all because they want to make what you've made the best it can be. And what's better than that? Those are the people you want to work with.
No, without a doubt. Yeah, I've loved everything that's been happening with this transition, especially now that TKO is the owners, well, Endeavor, but this is the TKO part of Endeavor,
Right.
and I'm curious how much the UFC is going to start being beneficial from it as well. Like a lot of their promo videos are fine. They've been almost the same for years. Their posters have been a little, I think, a little lacking recently. I think 300 poster could have been way bigger, but that's just me.
Mm.
But I'm curious. I've always been, I mean, not always, but I've been curious since this merger has happened, how much of the bleed over from what y'all do phenomenally when it comes to production and post production is going to lead over to what they're doing as well. Because not that they've been stagnant, but they've been, for the most part, doing a lot of the same things for a while that I think they could easily rise up to y'all's level.
Right. I still think it's early days in
Right.
terms of how we're going to interact with each other. There's been a little bit in terms of taking PLEs and doing some post work on them, like cleanup work in terms of music along
Mm.
those lines. So there's been a little bit of crossover there. Obviously, we used a venue, a UFC venue